Welcome back to NBA The Block Party, episode 14. NBA Deep Dive. I am joined by the one and only King Wells. How's it going, dude?
It's going good, man. How about you?
It's going really well. I am Jordan, and this is the Block Party. Okay, so let's talk NBA playoffs basketball. We have a game tonight, which would be Game 6, Boston-Miami. Last night, we had Game 5, Dallas-Golden State. Golden State closing it out and moving on to the NBA Finals. I don't know. Would you rather start with Dallas-Golden State, or would you rather go into? Yeah, you want to get your cool to start with Dallas-Golden State? Okay, cool. So I'm just curious on your thoughts with Dallas's performance as a whole. Do you think they underwhelmed a bit? Do you think they overachieved? Do you think they did kind of what they were expected to do? And what's your thoughts on what you saw also from Golden State? And obviously, congrats to them for making their I think it's like 5th NBA Finals in a span of how many every years, something like that.
I think it was 6 and 8.
Yeah. So congrats to them, and just curious on your thoughts on what you saw.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing, I was like, you remember we were talking about this like a month ago. I was really excited for this series. So I think the series as a whole, I'm a little bit underwhelmed. I thought it was going to be kind of like a barn burner, the team versus the star. And I just thought it was going to be a little bit more exciting than it was. I think at the end of the day, like you can't be mad at anybody. Probably I was instead of overestimating Luka and the Mavs, I think I was underestimating the Warriors a little bit.
Sure.
And because what happened was what should have happened. The Warriors are excellent across the board, and they took care of business. I think the Mavs are kind of lucky to get even a game on them, but that just goes to show how impressive Luka can be. Because although obviously it took all the Mavericks team to get them here, we can all really see where the star power really lies with that team. I don't think that take Luka out of the equation. I don't think this team really does anything. And so I think it's pretty impressive they made it as far as they did. And like I said, I think it's impressive they won a game. But when you play like that, I don't think they ever really had a chance in this series, the way they play with the living and dying by the three-point shot. And so I think I probably should have expected this more. Maybe if we get this series next year, it'll be a lot more exciting. But I'm happy for the Warriors, man. Overall, happy for the Warriors. I think it's great that they're back. I think it's deserved that they're back, and I'm excited to see them. They're still my pick to win it all, so I'm excited to see them go all the way.
Yeah, and obviously, if you're Dallas, you have to be thinking about what you did well, what you could have done better. You have Jalen Brunson, who heads into free agency on the open market, I believe unrestricted as well. What's the plan if you're Dallas? What are you trying to do to build around Luka? Clearly, like there's been a lot of talk during this series about how Luka needs another star player. They obviously traded Porzingis, who they didn't really feel, I guess, was that guy. They got Dinwiddie, who actually had a pretty good series, I would say, for the most part. Was pretty impressed with him. But what do you think Dallas needs to do in order to keep this Luka train in the upward trajectory?
Yeah, no, I mean that's the real question right now. I think for me it starts with defense. I think that's where they really could have used any type of energy this series. I think they kind of got away with it against Utah, and same thing with Phoenix. But you come to a team like the Warriors, and your cracks will turn into Grand Canyons, it seems, and the Warriors just kind of dance around you for 5 games. So I think that's where it starts. Defense, I think, would be what. I don't know if they need like one star player. I mean, obviously you can never have enough, and I'm not gonna go against that, but I think they do have some good wing players to play around Luka to pair with him. I would keep or strongly advise them to keep Jalen Brunson. I think whether he's starting or coming off the bench, I think that he plays an important role on this team as a secondary playmaker and scorer besides Luka. So I think it would be important to keep him, and I think they can probably do it. I don't want to say cheap, but I think they can probably do it on a contract that makes sense. I know he does have a couple suitors around the league. Knicks have been heavily rumored to be interested, but I think Dallas can keep him. One thing, just I know you're going to say something, but to stay on the what Dallas wants to do or what they should do, there was a lot of talk about Rudy Gobert being available, and I think that that's something I would look at if I'm the Mavericks. I don't know if it makes sense money wise or talent wise going out and all that, but it's something I think that I would definitely look at um, to kind of you know give them a strong pillar foundation on defense that they can work off too.
Right. And then how do you envision, do you think Gobert and Doncic could screen and roll? Like that could coexist pretty
Oh
well.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
it's all day.
so in terms of, I'm trying to just think of their team contract situation here because they obviously have Tim Hardaway Jr. signed. How many years left on his deal? I'm not too sure, but
If I had to guess, I'd say multiple. Like I don't think next year is the last year. I think he's got at least a couple more, but I'd have to double check.
that's what I thought as well. So are they a little bit pinned down in terms of options and flexibility? Like it doesn't seem like it, but
You mean as far as like cap space?
cap space and just in terms
Yeah,
of duration of contracts.
cap space for sure. But the one thing that they do have going for them is they have a lot of like contracts in the like 10 million, 15 million range. And the reason I'm saying that is because that those contracts are pretty easy to move, depending on the length and the player, obviously. But what I'm trying to say is even though they don't have the cap space to go and sign a star player, because I think they should use that money for Jalen Brunson this season, anyways, this offseason. But they do have some flexibility as far as trades, and I think that's why I'm saying, bringing it doesn't have to be Rudy Gobert, but I think a trade to bring in a solid player, I think is very, very possible this offseason.
Right. And there's obviously some other names that we could go into. There's some players entering free agency, mostly I want to say players with player options.
Mhm.
Um you think if you were building that team and you had the option to pick between a Gobert, just say, or another guaranteed or verified bucket, you could say, like a guaranteed scorer, you think the defensive presence of Gobert suits Luka better? Do you think that's the most important thing, or are you just basing that off of Gobert being a free agent and that being a possible option?
Yeah, it's more the second one.
Okay, so what do you think ideally in a perfect world if you could pair Luka beside a piece? Just for instance, give me any name in the NBA. Who's the perfect fit beside Luka Doncic at this given point of his career? Because I'm just
It's
trying to.
funny.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I was just gonna say I'm trying to factor in things like how ball dominant he is, how much he does on both ends, or sorry, how much he does in terms of a full offensive regiment to his game, like a fully diverse offense. He still probably needs to work on a lot of stuff on the defensive end. Probably my biggest critique of him this series was just a little bit um, was a little bit defensively, I would say, just in terms of like a little bit of lackluster
For
in terms
sure.
of getting
Not
back
just
on
a little bit.
defense, running back after bad calls, things like that you don't want to see. But obviously, a defensive minded guy could come in there and really help him, go guard the best player on the team and just be a defensive presence. But what's the most ideal piece? Long story short, what's the most ideal type of piece, or maybe give me a type of player that you would want to pair beside Luka, ignoring Gobert being the kind of hot free agent this summer, but just in general, who's the piece that is the most ideal fit beside Luka?
Yeah, so they need somebody like OG Anunoby type, somebody that can switch through multiple defensive positions, but also importantly set hard screens for Luca. Like ideally, this is someone maybe like think OG, but like a 6'10 OG. A bigger player that can set those hard screens for Luca. Like right now, they have a mix of players doing different things, but if they could kind of morph, Kleba and Reggie Bullock and Powell into one player. Like that's what they need. You know what I mean? They need a big to play off Luka. I know it's funny because they just sent one out in Kristaps, but
Right.
I think Kristaps while I do think he's a good player, and beside taking away his injury history, I think that he just wasn't really in the right position with the Mavs. I don't think it's a terrible fit, but I think that they can do it a little bit better. But that's what I think they need. I think they need a big man that's mobile defensively, that can hit the spot up three, and that likes to shoot the three, but that's big enough to set hard screens as well.
So like, call me crazy, but like a Miles Turner, could you see that working? Like a piece like that, like a stretch big who can run the floor and guard the perimeter. That's kind of
That would be nice. That'd be nice for sure.
um. If you're a team like Dallas, do you feel a bit pinned down in terms of like how confident are you in giving Jalen Brunson an enormous amount of money? Because he obviously played phenomenal this season, had a great postseason. He's obviously going to get paid, but the question I have is what's the appropriate amount where you're not, what's the expression, but to, pigeonhole yourself or to pin yourself down or to shoot yourself in the foot. What's the amount of money in an ideal world that you pay Brunson this offseason?
I think anywhere close to 20 is good. Without going under. I doubt he's going to get less than that. But the closer you are to 20, I think that's appropriate. I don't know what the max would be for him, but I don't assume that he's going to get a max.
So you're kind of thinking kind of like a Van Vliet style deal for him?
Exactly.
Would be where your head is? Okay. That's kind of where I'm thinking they try to play it as well, because like they clearly don't want to lose him, but I would just worry about him wanting more than the market might demand for him. As great of as a year he had, what does he think is fair, and what does he look at the Dallas situation and say, I'm that guy, I'm that next star you need, sign me? Like does he believe it? And as much as I want to believe that's Brunson, part of me doesn't quite feel like he's the guy for the second guy you want beside Luka. I think he could be a great piece for the team, and I think he's a guy you want to keep, but I just don't know how I see about him being the second guy. I think
totally. But the important thing in this situation though is that if they don't sign him, they kind of lose him for nothing,
right?
Because they don't have enough cap room. I'm fairly certain. I might be wrong about this, but I'm fairly certain they don't have enough cap room to replace him with any other player. Or make a substantial offer to any other players. So although I can see where you're going, I think the best business move now is to get him back. And then if you're still having these questions, at the trade deadline or whatever, it's going to be much easier to make that decision.
Right. Okay, cool. So Golden State obviously making the finals again. Steph Curry took home the award, the I guess you should say the Magic Johnson Western Conference Player of the. So this is where I guess we got to.
So it's a Western Conference Finals MVP.
Finals MVP. So it's actually
it's for that series,
right?
It's not for the
right.
Which I think I don't know about you, but I thought the award was for.
Same here. I was actually gonna just
entire playoffs.
Yeah, I was actually just gonna get into that as well. I heard when I watched the award being presented to him last night. I guess then they clarified it was for the series. So, yeah, that changes kind of my feelings on it a little bit. Like, we talked about it last week, the week before, about how I kind of just assumed that it was going to be a trophy given to the player who, on their given team, had the best playoffs so far going into the finals. So, including round one and the semis.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously the conference finals. But does that change how you feel at all about the award? See, for me personally, now I'm less inclined to say it has an as impactful meaning or it's as important to, now. Like, my assumption last week was that this was going to basically be given to the player who had the best pre-finals performance. So I was a little bit more okay with it in the sense that it would highlight, someone who had a really good playoffs and maybe choked in the finals. Yeah, sure.
If it was like that, do you still think it should have went to Steph? Like if it was for rounds 1, 2, and 3.
Quite honestly, I think if we were talking about rounds 1, 2, and 3, I would say Steph. But I think where I kind of disagree with it is just the last series going to Steph in a weird way.
Oh, okay. Who would you have put?
I think probably now that I know the context of the award and kind of how it works, like now that I know it's just specifically last series, given that, I would probably would have my personal vote probably would have went to Wiggins just from what I saw last series.
Yep.
Because Wiggins,
I'm okay with that.
Wiggins played unbelievable. He had some huge electrifying moments. And if I just think of the last series as a whole, who was the most impactful player for the Warriors? Now, you could obviously make arguments like you
There's
put
a lot of
Steph,
arguments, yeah.
Clay, Draymond. There's a lot. But I just think last series, who stands out the most to me, it would probably be Wiggins. Just from highlight plays.
Well, it looks like he kind of reinvented himself a little bit.
Right.
Let's be honest here.
Right.
We haven't seen that from him yet.
Right, and it was kind of the main storyline out of last series. So that's why I was a little surprised he didn't get it. I think like
And that
obviously
dunk on Luka was
right.
I'm so happy they contested that. Oh, can you imagine if he didn't challenge that?
I know. It was it was amazing. And I mean that being one of the many reasons why I think he deserved it. But yeah, I don't know. I guess the way I look at it is it's not as impactful now that I know it's just for a round, because it's like kind of a little now foolishness. It's like now it gets into the context of what we were talking about, where it's like you're going to have a guy like Steph's going to win it now. And if he wins the finals MVP, it could just be another. Yeah. So it's kind of not as impactful as I like the idea of it being a highlight of, or a showcase rather, of a player who's just done really, really well in the playoffs going into the finals. So that way we'd have context on, okay, this is the NBA Finals MVP, but if you look, maybe Andrew Wiggins had a phenomenal playoff run, and now we know that Andrew Wiggins was a big part of the reason why they won that chip that year going into the finals. So I kind of like the idea of it in that sense more, but now knowing that it's just, a conference finals only thing, I'm not a big a fan of it. Actually, I kind of agree with you now more that it's a little bit redundant, if anything. So, yeah, my opinion changed on it knowing the context of the award. But with that said, Steph did win it. Like I said, I probably would have voted Wiggins myself, but I think the thing with the Warriors is they're such a good team. You probably could have made an argument for a lot of players in last round,
Definitely.
the round before, Draymond, Clay, Wiggins,
Kevon Looney, man.
Kevon Looney, yeah. I mean, just an absolute monster on the glass. And he had like 18 boards last game, and the first couple games was an absolute monster. So yeah, a lot of players who deserve recognition, especially if it was just last round. Like, I don't think Steph necessarily had the best round this series compared to what he did in Memphis or what he did in versus Denver, right? Like, I don't know.
I haven't compared, so I can't say for sure.
Yeah, I'm just kind of eyeballing, like thinking off the top of my head from what I remember, but I don't know. Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit more hesitant on the award now because I don't think it has as much significance just because of the context of being one round, and it doesn't hit as hard for me. I don't know. I don't like it as much. But anyway, Steph won it. It's the first time we've seen it presented. It did look kind of cool to see it come out, with like the hats and stuff, and it gave kind of another element to winning the conference finals, but I guess I'll just have to see how it grows on me.
Yeah, and we'll see how the next awards play out. We'll do the East one, and we'll see how next year and the year after, and
right.
We'll see how it goes.
And speaking of the East, and I would like to actually start in a little bit of a different way. So Let's start with, now go to the East. We obviously have Game 6 tonight in Miami, right?
Yeah.
Miami, right? No, in Boston.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
In Boston. Sorry, Miami was the 1 seed. So Game 7 would be Miami. But that probably, if anything, for me personally, kind of seals the deal a bit more. I think Boston takes it tonight. Are you in the same boat as me when I say that?
I do, for sure. Well, I said Celtics in 6, so I'm not going to stray from that. But I did see that Smart and Robert Williams are questionable tonight. That might be just mind games. However, if both of them don't play, I do like Miami's chances a little bit more. The only thing is Miami is so injured on their own side. I know Kyle Lowry's been playing, but he hasn't. And Tyler Hero's been out. I just don't know. Even with those two out, I don't know if they have enough. But
right,
without Smart and Time Lord, I like Miami's chances a little more, but I'll still definitely say Celtic.
And who would you give the Larry Bird Eastern Conference Player of the Series, I guess you should say, given what you've seen from both teams so far in this conference finals? And obviously you could include your prediction tonight, what you see. But who would you give it to as of now?
I mean, I think it has to be Jason Tatum. I don't know if he's running away with it in my book, but I think it has to be him.
Hmm. Hmm. And I think that would probably be the safe bet to take if you were going to say who would get it at this point. Now, we could be totally wrong. Miami could come in tonight,
Well, yeah,
completely shut us up, right?
although from what I've seen so far, it just seems like Celtics are going on all cylinders, and Miami is just struggling to keep up. Doesn't it just kind of feel that way?
Definitely. And it kind of feels like tonight is the tie the silver bow. It's over. It does feel like tonight is
Oh,
kind of
nail in the
the
coffin for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. And especially what I saw with the Celtics from last game. Now, who's the most impressive player on Miami this series? Who's the most disappointing player on Miami this series? And
Hmm.
obviously, you can include context like injury for Lowry. You could say maybe injury Tyler Hero. Um,
Oh, impressive for sure would be it's the Struess and Gabe Vincent, both of them. I give it to both of them because I'm so impressed with maybe a little bit more Gabe Vincent, but really really impressed with those two guys, considering kind of where they came from and how they started their careers.
mhm,
To be playing like this at this level,
mhm.
very very impressed. I know maybe it's not news to anybody, but I haven't watched a lot of Miami throughout the year. Maybe that's why, but I'm really impressed with those two, so I give it to them.
Cool. And honorable mention because I know you'll probably agree with me on this one, but Victor Oladipo for sure,
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely,
for sure.
definitely, definitely.
Um,
And well, Victor Oladipo is going to get a nice contract, I think, this offseason. I think he's
yeah,
done very well for himself. I'm
yeah.
kind of hoping the Raptors go after him, but I don't know
That
if we'll
that
be able to
that
afford him.
that would be pretty cool. I didn't even think about that. I'm really happy for Vic because he obviously coming off that quadricep injury. He was playing at all NBA level before that.
And it happened against the Raptors too, so I remember the injury really well.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. Baseline. I think he was driving baseline or something, right? Or he was
It
driving.
was like a fast break, and Pascal, I don't remember exactly, but it was like a fast break kind of thing, and Pascal was defending him, and it just like a hard foul. Nothing malicious, but it was just not a fun sight.
Yeah, and to obviously come back to that and get to the level he's playing at now. Well, we have to also take into context. Sorry, he came back last season or 2 seasons ago, and he pulled something in his knee. I remember watching the game. He went up for a dunk and he dunked the ball and he came down and he held it was holding his right knee or something, left knee, whatever knee was. So he's been on and off battling injuries. Obviously, that's a risk if you sign a player like that, but you gotta love what you saw from him, especially this series, especially just scrappy how scrappy he was defensively all series. And a lot of his stuff, a lot of his defensive plays didn't quite show up on the box score. It was a lot of like
But
forced
people noticed, though.
turnovers.
People
Yeah,
noticed for sure.
yeah, and I think
And,
people took notice, so that's cool.
and not just his play on the court, although obviously that's more important, but really his effort level and his kind of attitude throughout the whole season with Miami.
Yeah.
Having seemingly having no problem sticking to the bench, being a practice guy, and then getting thrown to the Wolves just like that, but being ready for it. Like
Hmm.
people notice that. That's really that's really impressive, and that's going to take him a long way for sure.
So you think there will be teams this off season interested
No
in,
doubt
in
about it.
Victor Oladipo
Yeah, yeah.
and
I
will
don't think he's getting a max or Jalen Brunson money. Okay, I don't think that's happening.
sure.
But I think probably 28 out of 30 teams will at least throw a mid-level exception at him, something like that. Somewhere between 5 and 10 million.
Which
Whether
could
he takes it is up to him.
right,
But
right.
I think that's at least for one more year, kind of like a
Which could
tryout year.
which could end up being a huge steal for a team too. That's the
Well,
thing
yeah,
with
if it
five to
works
ten
out,
million,
and
right?
then the next year after, he could sign a big deal or something. But I think that's the way it should work, anyways. But you know what? The other thing too is, and I'm just talking out of my ass here, right? But maybe he's just so impressed with Miami giving him that chance that he says, you know what, I'll sign another minimum with you guys or something just to stay close, for another year or something. Probably not, but
Yeah, no, I mean that's
you know,
not unheard of.
goes both
So,
ways.
yeah, exactly. And it's like you took a chance on me. I'm gonna
That's
help
right.
help you out, and if they make the finals or if they're close to making the finals, maybe that's a little bit of incentive.
Hmm.
I do like the idea of the Raptors possibly giving him a look.
He'd do a lot of good for us.
Yeah, and I could see him fitting into the system. He hits the three, plays defense. He clearly works hard on his game. He clearly loves the game. He doesn't want to give up. He doesn't want to quit. Battling multiple injuries, coming back takes a lot of mental durability to sustain injury, similar to what we see with Klay too. And you got to be so happy for Klay Thompson. I mean, just to see him back to full form. And last night especially, I was so impressed with Klay last night. It really just looked like old school Klay Thompson, and when you see stuff like that, you're like, okay, well, he's ready for the finals. The Warriors are ready for the finals.
They're so ready, man. They're so fucking ready.
And yeah, I mean, just gotta love seeing guys come back from injury like that. And hopefully next season we can see guys who we didn't get a chance to, like Jamal Murray, Jonathan Isaac, and we saw Markelle come back later this year, which was really, really good to see. So yeah, it's always good to see guys come back from injury, and especially when it's like multiple injuries battling, John Wall, double, these kind of weird fluky double injuries. Like
well, a lot of times what happens is, especially with leg injuries, right? You try to compensate with the other side, and then you get a freak accident because you're jumping a little different or whatever on the other side, right?
Right.
You see it all the time.
Right. It's like and yeah, it's like it's like the weird almost like weight management where it's like even just thinking of Durant's calf injury, which then turned Achilles, right? It's like it's not uncommon to see I think it's like you said, the weight distribution, right? Especially with these guys with the full force. And well, speaking of injury and trying to keep it somewhat positive with in regards to injury, Zion Williamson has, I believe, been cleared by the New Orleans Pelicans. So they have come out and said that he is fully ready to go for next year,
nice.
Which should hopefully be, bearing setback, a pretty exciting 2023 season for the New Orleans Pelicans. And especially given, their placement of their draft pick, the development of their young guys in Herb Jones, Jose Alvarado, development of guys that they've traded for, like Jonas Valanciunas, CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram flourishing into a young star. Yeah, I mean, how could you not be anticipating a really, really good 2023 for the New Orleans Pelicans? Sorry to stray away, but that's just, I saw that pop up on my phone yesterday, and I made note to bring it up because we've talked about Zion throughout the year, obviously. Okay. So you're saying Boston gets it done tonight. Boston in 6 was what you originally called. That would mean we have Golden State Boston in the NBA Finals. So my question to you.
I don't want to make a prediction on it yet because they haven't done it yet.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough.
Just out of respect for the Heat. Although I don't think the Heat are winning tonight. I just don't want to call the next series until they're out.
Does it really affect how you feel about Golden State, regardless of who they play, though? That's my question.
Because I call Golden State to win, and whoever wins this, I will say the same.
And I think it's probably safe to say that they're the favorites, regardless of who makes it in on the East at this point.
I would think so.
Right, but whose odds do you if you just say you're on the East fighting for your life here, you're depending on a team in the East to win it for you. Who do you like matching up with Golden State better? I think probably Boston would be the obvious choice, but I'm curious if there's an argument for Miami.
Well, if they're fully healthy, I think Miami has a good chance. But I would have said the same thing with Milwaukee.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough. Which makes sense. Do you think that's a good point, though? Do you think if Milwaukee's in this situation, Golden State's sweating a little bit more? You'd have to assume probably yes, but I mean Boston's played so good that it's hard to really count them out of anything. But I mean,
it's a good question. I'm not sure.
I kind of feel like they're a little happy about avoiding the Bucks. I think a lot of teams would want to try to avoid the Bucks if possible. But I mean,
considering they're the defending champions, they must have like a little bit more respect for Milwaukee than they would for the Celtics. I would assume so.
Right. And I'm not sure if you caught the post game TNT interview, inside the NBA interviews Steph and Draymond, but Draymond basically came out and said they're playing the Celtics. Draymond literally came out and said we know we're playing the Celtics. Like,
I love Draymond Green.
So he keeps it real. And do you think that's a level of just awareness on his part? Do you think that's just is he basing that off of injury? Is he basing that off of what he's seen? I think it's probably, like most people would probably agree, that the Celtics are probably the favorite to make it at this point. But But what do you think Draymond's reasoning for that is? Is it just, the combination of Smart, Tatum, Brown, Horford? Is it everything, or is it just
I think
Miami
it's
being
more
deflated?
just to be like, we're not scared.
Right.
Boston, bring it on. We're looking at you. You know what I mean?
Right.
Maybe put a little bit of extra pressure on Boston and put a little head game into it.
Right.
Because
That's
Miami's going to be pissed about that.
right. And that's kind of what I'm thinking too. Is he playing mental games with Boston? Is he kind of like
Always.
it kind of feels like it kind of felt like a bit of like a little, like, not a jinx, but kind of like all right, well, you should win this. So, but kind of like staring down the barrel a bit. You know what I mean? Like, he really just doesn't care. But, yeah, I mean, what does Miami need to do tonight, I guess, to pull this off? Who needs to be there for Miami? Obviously, Lowry would be huge. Hero would be huge. But do we need to see Bam need to be more aggressive on offense? Do we need to see?
But the thing with Bam is that when he's playing Robert Williams, he's got so much trouble with him. As soon as Williams is off the floor and Bam's there, he can do a lot of damage. But it just seems like Time Lord is his Achilles heel, so to speak. So I don't know if you can count. What I would count on Bam is to at least keep him off the boards and get the ball, like, get those assists, from the post, because Jimmy Butler cuts so well, and if Adebayo can kind of get that cutting game going with him, I think that's a good recipe. The only problem is that, I mean, that's one thing, but Boston has just so many ways to just take the spirit out of you, and I just don't think Miami has enough to even kind of like match up right now. It's like, and I'm saying it with those injuries in mind. If they're fully healthy, I think this conversation goes a little differently. I'm not saying I don't pick Celtics to win, but I don't think it's an easy debate to have, but at the way it is right now, and listen, I'm not trying to take anything away from the Celtics. The Celtics are playing just incredibly, and this is a hard series for them. It's just big picture. I just don't think Miami has enough, so they need a couple miracles, really.
So you're Miami Heat, you lose tonight, and fast forward to the off season.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? Because clearly, the consensus idea when it comes to Miami is that they need another star. They need to give Jimmy someone else to play with. But I thought the idea of bringing in Lowry was kind of that, exactly, right, to bring in that guy that could, Now, Lowry is getting older. He's battled injuries before. He's been healthy, the last couple of years, but there's been flashes of, missing games, time with the Raptors, stuff like that. It is that on paper, that move made perfect sense, and I think it was a great move. Still, I wouldn't turn my back on what I think about that move. But what does Miami need to do? Given Jimmy Butler, you have to, I think we would both agree on this, but Jimmy Butler's time is right now. Like, he is, you want to surround Jimmy with a win now team based on the Jimmy we're seeing, and probably the Jimmy I would anticipate in the next 2 to 3 years. I would say I want to give this Jimmy right now a chance to win. Do you think that they need a player on Jimmy's level? Do they need someone who is a tier below? Do they need someone who's a tier above? What does Miami need to try to do? Are they trying to get a big name in the offseason? Are they trying to make a couple small trades? Are they trying to wait it out and see with Lowry and maybe look at flipping one of their younger pieces like a Tyler Hero or a Duncan Robinson? Like, we could probably both agree Bam's untouchable, and I think Bam and Jimmy are probably the foundations you build around. But besides that, is there anyone else you think that they wouldn't want to move? What are you doing if you're running the Miami front office, based on, obviously, like, them losing this tonight? Because obviously if they go to win this and then go on to win the NBA Finals, you're probably not doing much. But I think just heading down the path we kind of see this going, losing tonight, I would assume, and just kind of what my gut feeling says. But what are you doing if you're Miami, coming so close in the last 3-4 years, NBA in the bubble, and then now to making the finals? What are you doing? Because something's working clearly, but something's not quite there yet. So what are you doing if you're Miami?
Well, they don't have a whole lot of options unless they trade, significant parts of their team. But I think one thing to look out for sure is Duncan Robinson being moved, especially with Strus basically stealing his role from him.
Right.
Um, so I think Duncan Robinson will. I'd be really surprised if he wasn't moved this offseason. And that's like a 10, I think he's like 15 million. So they could get a player back. They probably have to throw some draft equity in there too, to make anything significant. But I think that's kind of the only thing they can do right now, other than a major move, including any of the stars that you mentioned,
Right.
which I don't see happening, at least not right now.
Um, do you see a world in which Jimmy Butler, how is Jimmy Butler going to continue to play at this level? Or is he on his downslope? Is he plateauing in terms of growing? Do you think he has more room to grow? Like what's your opinion of Jimmy's timeline and where he sits? Because
Mm,
that's the ultimate question for me, is like, how are we evaluating this timeline, and are
I think
we
you said it. I
good
think
enough
two
to
to
get
three
there?
years, that's their window right now.
Right.
Maybe
And
closer to 2 than 3.
given the Lowry trade, given the Jimmy trade, would you say their only untouchable piece would probably be Bam? Could you see a world
I
in
don't
which
I
they
don't know if
move
I would
Bam?
if I would say he's untouchable,
Yeah,
to
that's
be honest.
that's what I was kind of getting into. Like,
Like
could
I think Hero might be, even though like this is not what I would do, I think Hero might be considered a little bit more untouchable than Bam is right now.
interesting, interesting.
I might be wrong about that. It's just kind of how I feel,
Hmm.
and mostly because of his age.
Um, Where where does Bam have room to grow? I think
Yeah.
probably, right? But
Well, look at this series.
um where can he get to offensively? Can he get to a point where he is, cuz I would
I
say
think,
at this point he's more of a defensive player, right? Like,
yeah, and I think that's okay. I think offensively, if he can get to the point where, like, I don't think 20 points should be his bar. Maybe that's what you make him aim for, and if he gets anywhere close to that, that's gravy. But
mhm.
I think like if he can, his role in Miami at its best, if you ask me, is not really the scorer. It's post playmaker for sure. That's what I would really develop with him.
All right.
But defensive beast, get those rebounds, get those blocks, get those steals, be in the running for defensive player of the year every year. But then you have that part of you that can score, because he can hit his free throws, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
He's
about
a decent
70,
free throw.
70ish, 71.
So build on that. Maybe find ways to keep getting to the line, but his bread and butter is always going to be his defense. And I think his kind of unique skill for him is going to be that playmaking.
Right. Which I think took a little bit of a backseat this year just because of Lowry coming in there
Yeah.
initially. But I think that was one of the big positives of him last season, was a big improvement on the playmaking side of things. And I
Hmm.
think they might need to try to find a way to rekindle that in him and utilize that a little bit more, because I think that was a big part of his game. And I think if I'm not mistaken, I believe his assisted turnover ratio was pretty through the roof as well 2 years ago when he was pulling off, I think it was over 5 assists a game. So I think they could try to find a way to utilize that a little bit better. Now, um, if I'm not mistaken, Lowry signed a 1-year deal with them, right? Or was there maybe a
I
player
think it's
option?
at least a 2 year, because for a sign and trade, it has to be at least a 2 year deal.
Okay. Is there a and he's making is he still making ballpark 30ish? What's what
It's like ballpark 25.
Okay. And is there a world or a reality where you see them moving on from Lowry before or after this 1 year season, 1 year stretch, giving up on that idea? Is
Like
there
this summer,
Yeah.
I think the realistic answer is that even if they wanted to do that, which I don't think, but even if they wanted to, nobody's taking him
Right. For
because
the
of the way he's been injured, and like why would you?
Right, right.
Nobody's given up anything for him. They probably have to give up picks to just get rid of him, so it's in their best interest to keep him.
Sure.
One thing I was just kind of thinking about, a player that might be a target for them, would be like trading Duncan Robinson for like a Christian Wood, throwing some draft picks in there.
Interesting.
Then having Wood next to Bam Adebayo, I think that'd be pretty impressive.
Interesting. And I guess obviously a team like Houston is probably like I would say Christian Wood isn't quite in their timeline. I don't think that's something they're
Yeah, he's a player to watch for sure because he's young. Like I think he's like 25, maybe 26, but or maybe 27 even. But like,
yeah, it's like
so
27
he's
I think, but
relatively young. But on the Houston Rockets,
it's
he's an oldie, and
right.
doesn't really make sense there.
Right. Like when you're surrounding a team of 19, 20-year-olds.
Especially
And
what are they, third in the draft this year?
right, and
So they'll probably get a big.
right, they easily could. Or if are they top three? Are they third?
I think they're third. Yeah.
Yeah. So then you'll probably have Jabari Smith and Chet. So they could even end up taking Paulo at 3, and then wanting to
You're gonna have a bit of a logjam there for sure.
yeah, maybe clear out Wood, and then you got obviously your young core with Jalen Green, KPJ, Jashawn Tate. Who's there? They have another young piece. Who did they draft? Kenyon Martin.
They got Şengün as well.
Şengün. That's who they got in the draft last year. That's who I'm thinking of. Which, to be honest, it's probably at this point in their best interest to trade Wood just so they can give Şengün more consistent minutes.
That's part of it for sure. For sure.
Because, I mean, look at the end of this year when Şengün was playing like 20, 25 a night. He was very productive within that time frame. So I think that makes a lot of sense for Houston to explore that. How do you feel about the Raptors possibly trading for a guy like Christian Wood?
Yeah, I mean, I thought you'd probably ask that. It makes sense. Everything about it makes sense. I just don't love it, and I'm not really sure why. But I would not be against it, depending who we're giving up. But as long as we're not, I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to trade out Gary Trent for Christian Wood.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
That's what I was gonna say. Like, are you losing? Are you losing Gary Trent? Are you losing Precious Achua? Are you losing OG? Like, I don't.
None of those.
Yeah, like I don't know about OG. I'm a little more okay with the idea of Precious, I think. But I mean, how could you turn your back on Precious with what we saw?
Well, not just that. Precious too is he's on his rookie deal. He's making like 2 or 3 million a year for the next year or 2 or 3.
Right.
But I think at least 2. So that's just another, like, besides all the on-court stuff that I like from him.
Right.
Just salary cap wise, those contracts are so valuable.
Right. And I just think, how could you trade a guy like Gary Trent? Like, no, you just can't.
Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, they said no to Kristaps Porzingis for Trent, right? So I don't know how.
That's wild, eh?
It is, and I was thinking about this yesterday. Like it is and it isn't. At the time, I think now I would be more open to it than I was at the trade deadline, because of Kristaps's injury history and stuff.
Right.
Because Kristaps honestly is kind of like exactly the players on paper, the type of player the Raptors might need. I just don't know if he would like really fill that role the way we would want him to. And he's getting paid so much money, man. That's tough.
Obviously it didn't work out for Dallas. Do you think Washington intends to keep him? Like, what's their plan with that move?
I think it's a move they made to entice Beal to stay.
Is that enough though? Right.
I don't know. I've been thinking I think Beal is going to leave this offseason. Although it's just weird to say where, because not a lot of teams have cap space, and it's just unless they do like a sign and trade, which they might.
Could you I mean, I don't know how fair this is to say about Beal, given kind of like a 1-year dip in his production last year, dealing with the injury, but. Is there a bit of risk trading for a guy like Beal now at this point of his career?
Definitely,
a little bit older, doesn't quite hit the 3 as much as you'd think.
Well, yeah, because anybody taking him is not just taking him on a 1-year deal. Like, he will likely be signing a brand new contract,
right?
A big contract,
right?
Which it might seem fine now, but in 3-4 years, might not look all that great on your books. So definitely a risk. But Beal's a great player, so that's why you have to weigh with that.
How do you feel about the Raptors making a move for a guy like Bradley Beal?
I don't hate it. I don't hate it. Obviously, Gary Trent has to be going out in that deal because they duplicate each other.
Right.
Um, I don't hate it. I don't know that that's where I want to kind of throw all my chips.
And what's your max? What's your max price in that Gary Trent and what? What's the? Because I would assume it's Gary Trent and a pick, maybe Gary Trent and picks, maybe
Would have to
Gary
be.
Trent and I don't know what, but
Well, like here's the thing. If um, because if we're doing a sign and trade for Beal, it's because Beal says I want to go to Toronto. So right there, I don't think that's happening. But let's just assume. And if he does that, in the history of sign and trades, the team that's trading away the start, like signing and trading away the star player, usually loses that trade,
right.
at least on paper.
The expression trading a dollar for 4 quarters, right? You always lose if you get the 4 quarters. If you get the dollar, you usually win.
But 4 quarters equals a dollar.
No, I know, but the expression is in the like when you trade your dollar for 4 quarters, like
Yeah,
right, like it's always better to be getting the dollar.
like yeah, like a great player for four mediocre players.
Right, that's the expression. So it's like trade like you always want to have the whole dollar bill. You never want 4 quarters, right? Like
For sure, for sure. But what I'm saying is like in sign and trades, the team that's signing, like in this case, Miami, in this case, Washington, they're not going to get full value back for Beal. So it probably would be if everything else fell into place, it probably would be something like Gary Trent, um, maybe a first round pick, and then another player to fill salary.
right.
But I don't know if I would want to do that. Like I like Beal. But I don't think Beal, is like the missing piece to turn us into a contender either.
Right. So what team makes the most sense for what team is in the best situation to trade for a piece like Beal? What about a team like Miami? Could you see something like that happening? That's been kind of talked about for a couple of years now, I think, if I can remember correctly. But could you?
Yeah, I mean, they'd have to say goodbye to somebody in the starting lineup probably to make the money work. But Miami seems like the type of team to do that. Um,
Especially if they lose in the conference finals here, they're gonna. We know Pat Riley doesn't like to typically stay stagnant. Like he's not afraid to make
and they
moves.
like going for the big moves. They like
Yeah,
to do that kind of thing. So
yeah, exactly.
it seems right. The money is just what makes it really tough.
Right. Lowry, Butler,
Yeah,
Bam,
that's the toughie. That's the toughie.
Duncan.
Like
Um,
Duncan going out for sure, but they're still like another 15, 20 million short.
right, right.
Excuse me.
So yeah, it could get tricky in that sense. But I'm trying to think now. So like, it has me thinking.
Yeah.
You trade. Like just go back to the expression I was using there, the 4 quarters for a dollar, just the analogy, right? But can you think of any times where the team getting the 4 quarters has won the trade?
Like the team that's
Getting the multiple
doing the
piece
sign and trade?
or the team. So I'm saying the team trading away the star, right? Like
Yeah.
the team getting the 4 pieces back or the
I don't
multiple
think
pieces
so.
back.
I don't
Can
think
you
so
think
ever.
of any scenario where the team trading away the superstar won the trade? How about this? Anthony Davis, New Orleans. Somewhat, you could say.
But I don't think that was a sign and trade.
Okay, maybe not sign and trade, but like, I'm just saying trade in general. Like,
Well, then yeah, probably it's probably way more 50-50.
yeah. Well, I agree with you. Like, I think that the team trading away the star, especially in the NBA, usually loses. Like, more chance or not, you're losing if you're trading away a star player. But I think there's times where you can make it work if your GM is smart about it, right? Like, I'm thinking
For sure. But I was talking specifically about sign and trades though.
Sure. Okay, fair enough. Well, I mean, sign and trades, I can look at a few that like on paper would be disastrous, but I mean, like let's look at Kevin Durant for D'Angelo Russell, who then gets flipped into Andrew Wiggins, and now it's like, well, it's not so bad. You know what I mean? Like
It's not so bad.
considering
But it's still
you're
Kevin Durant. They
losing
lost.
Kevin Durant, right? But like better than getting nothing back in return. I mean, Lowry,
Course.
Precious, obviously. There's a few examples, but I was more specifically trying to get at if you're salvaging a star player, like if you're losing a star, I guess a sign and trade is much different context because it's like you're really getting a bare minimum usually on a sign and trade, right? Like I'm actually a little surprised D'Angelo Russell was even included in that Kevin Durant deal. I guess it was just given the context that D'Lo probably wasn't staying, maybe, or what the plan was with that. I guess Brooklyn was just like, well, we're happy we're getting Durant, we got to make the salary work. But
probably that.
What, like, is there? I mean, obviously,
and you know what? Probably Durant told them too, I want Kyrie.
Right.
And so they knew that was coming, so that's why they moved him.
Right. And then I guess the same kind of situation with Paul George, Kawhi. That's probably why you see Paul George being traded. Like the context of like, well, I think if you look at that Paul George trade though, like Presti did a pretty good job of getting, like, obviously,
yeah, he did,
Oladipo and Sabonis, right, and then the slew of draft picks.
I thought you meant when he traded Paul George to the Clippers. That one is more impressive.
What I'm trying to think of that trade. What did he get back in that trade, the Clippers trade? I'm getting confused between
like the
OKC
future
and
first with pick swaps in between, and he got Shea Gilgeous, and
Shea
he got
Gilgeous, right,
and somebody else, I think.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
He got everything.
Yeah.
Like absolutely everything that wasn't nailed down. They got it.
Right. The SGA piece too was prime. That's a good one. That's a really good one. So I mean, it can be done, but then there's also the other flip side. Like, let's look at the Lakers trading Kyrie for Isaiah Thomas and Jay Crowder, and there can be some pretty disastrous ones, right? Like
yep.
in that sense. So I mean, it's I don't that wasn't a sign and trade, but just context of trading your star player out to get depth, get pieces coming back in return. I think it's probably easier when you're a rebuilding team. Right? Like, I think if you look at the Cleveland team that traded away Kyrie, they were still trying to compete for a title. So they traded for a slew of vets, but that just clearly didn't work. But I think if you're getting picks like Presti, you're getting a young piece like SGA, it's a little easier to swallow trading a guy like a Paul George away, right? If you're getting a slew of picks, blah, blah, blah. And how many picks do they have over the next 4 drafts? It's like something ridiculous, right? Like 16
like 20
or something. Yeah, right. So they've definitely, like, long hauled their process. And I think OKC is what, third? Oh, no, maybe OKC is the 3rd pick.
Are they second?
Sorry, they're second. I'm tripping. Orlando, OKC, it's got to be Houston, I think. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're right. They're second.
And Kings and Detroit.
OKC is definitely second because that's the spot they took Durant in, and that was the whole storyline of they have the same.
Gotcha.
Pick. Right. Okay, cool. So yeah, that's good. Good to kind of go over that, kind of get some context on how free agency is looking, what teams need to do to improve, what they can do. Are they pigeonholed? Are they stuck? Or, like, do they have flexibility?
I think it's going to be a fun free agency.
Yeah, I think so.
Like it usually is. That's the trend the last couple off seasons, but
right.
I think it's going to be fun.
Any thoughts on Nike dropping Kyrie? Anything hidden behind closed doors?
I didn't even
there?
see that.
So Nike apparently has cut ties with Kyrie Irving. There is some speculation that's because of their showing loyalty to Durant, and apparently there might be some sort of something going on there with, you know, one of them wanting out and splitting up. I don't know how true it is. I could also see them being totally fine and just keep going, not really caring what people think. But
I don't know. I didn't hear about that. That doesn't sound good.
It doesn't sound good. I mean, I don't know how much validity there is to it being a result of Durant. It could just be a Nike Kyrie thing. There's been some
whatever happens, Kyrie doesn't look good in this. This is like his 3rd try.
Yeah.
Like, dude.
So where
it's not them. At some point, you got to look in the mirror.
Where was anyone trading for Kyrie Irving right now? Is anyone going to make that?
I think the Lakers would.
Right. Like that's the most obvious one. I think that's like the one team primed to probably say fuck it, right? But what do the Lakers need to give up to get Kyrie?
I don't think they have enough.
That's the thing, right? So
unless they're giving up Anthony Davis.
I mean,
and I don't think they should.
Yeah, that's tough to do. But I mean, Kyrie and LeBron back together could be fun. And there was a bit of a story with that regarding Kyrie was on a podcast talking about how he regrets leaving LeBron and how he handled the situation. So that's caused a little bit of smoke and fight where there's fire for some people. But I mean, there's always going to be talks of LeBron and free agency and what the Lakers could do, what the Lakers are primed to do. What do you think the biggest name or the biggest splash in free agency, if you had to predict it at this point? Like, who do you think makes the biggest splash in free agency? It's obviously probably impossible to predict right now.
Now, it sounds like it's going to be Kyrie Irving.
Right. And, I mean, it could be Kyrie, but I mean, there's also probably, like, there's Beal, right? There's There's tons of possibilities. Like the Raptors could make a move, but well, at this point, what team is in the position where they should make a move besides the Lakers? Let's say, like let's keep it interesting here because obviously we know the Lakers are going to go full rebuild mode, but in the sense of like rehauling their vets, like we've talked about, and, their 1-year contracts. But who's primed to make? Is it Dallas? Is it Phoenix? Is it a team like Minnesota? Maybe like who is primed to make a big splash? Like who's a team you're looking at right now saying they need to make a move because they're not young. Their time is right now. Is it a Miami? Like is Phoenix staying still? Like I
think Philly's under a lot of pressure this offseason.
Sure.
I just don't know if they can make a big move.
Sure.
But
how could
they're under a lot of pressure. I wouldn't be surprised to see them make a move. New York is a team I'd watch.
Utah, maybe.
Well, yeah, with the rumors there, it sounds like Gobert's on his way out. I just don't know where he's gonna go. Like there was some rumors about maybe the Raptors trading for him. It's like I don't know.
What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't hate the fit, but I despise the contract. There's no way. I don't want anything to do with that contract.
Yeah.
Like Rudy Gobert is one of the best defensive players in the league. He does affect the game like that. Right. But if he could shoot a 3, it would be way more. And I'm not asking for much, but if he could shoot a 3-pointer, that contract is reasonable to me. But since he can't, I just don't think that's a reasonable contract. And I think we talked about a little bit maybe a couple of weeks ago about how I was trying to get into how, Supermax deals. I don't think Rudy Gobert is on a Supermax, but whatever, like max deals in general, a lot of the times they can kind of hamper the team as opposed to making it so the player doesn't want to leave. Because what happens is you tie up so much money with this one player, and when it comes to you want to surround them with other talent, you can't. Because all your money's going in one place, and then that player says, "Well, I'm going to leave because you got nothing around me," and then another team will just swoop in.
Sure.
So it's kind of has a backwards effect sometimes. And in this case with Rudy Gobert, like I said, I like the fit, but there's no way I'm sending out enough money to match it. You got to let go one, maybe both of Anunoby and Trent.
Yeah, no,
it's
not happening.
Come on,
especially not OG. I still don't think it's the time to trade OG. I think it's.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's no chance.
Yeah, no. But it's an interesting thought because it's kind of exactly what they need. It's just at what cost?
I don't know. I would want somebody that can spread the floor a little bit. If I'm gonna settle with a big,
Fair enough.
I need someone that can spread the floor. I need that option.
Sure, fair enough.
Because otherwise, I'm good with just rolling with Precious.
Yeah. Fair enough, especially given the age, the contract, what we saw in the playoffs. Cool. I mean, that's everything I wanted to touch on today. We are coming up to the hour here. Is there anything that you wanted to touch on? Anything you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, man, just a couple things. I mean, one, I thought you were going to bring it up. I'm surprised you didn't, but we were talking about the Lakers, and I've been hearing some rumors about their coaching search. Have you been following that?
I haven't been too into it. Been kind of more just focused on playoffs, what we're seeing. I've kind of been staying away from free agency and rumors and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm pretty open to some of the ideas I've heard. Obviously, I think Quinn Snyder at one point was a pretty viable option, and then given the context of Utah losing again, I think that's probably still in play. I've heard. Well, I know there was some rumblings of what's his name, the announcer there, going to Sacramento. So I think that's out of the question. There's also Fizdale. I think wasn't that another?
Were you talking about Mark Jackson?
Sorry, Mark Jackson. Yeah, he's going. Isn't Mark Jackson the front runner for Sacramento, if I'm not mistaken? So I think that's what I've been hearing. So I'm kind of I've been following a little bit, but
Sacramento signed I think they signed Mike Brown.
Oh, was it Mike Brown? I thought it was Mark Jackson.
No, Mark Jackson was a rumor, but I think they've signed Mike Brown since.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so yeah, shows you my awareness of what's going on with the coaching game in the NBA offseason. I haven't been following too hard. That's the last I heard of it. But is there some updates on the Lakers side?
From what I'm seeing, Terry Stotts is coming back a lot.
Interesting.
I don't love it.
Yeah, I don't love it either.
It's not that I don't like him as a coach. I think he's a good coach, but I thought Frank Vogel was a good coach, so
right.
Don't see a big difference there.
Right.
I think the other name I heard that I kind of like more, although it's a bit of a crapshoot, is Darvin Ham. who's an ex-player. I think he's an assistant in Milwaukee right now.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Okay.
apparently
I've seen on
that
the
was
sidelines. Interesting.
LeBron was pushing for him. And that one I think makes a little bit more sense because it seems like LeBron likes playing for coaches that are ex-players.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe Terry Stotts was an ex-player, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that one makes a little bit more sense. I'm also hearing rumblings about them being interested in nabbing Doc Rivers, which sounds like a Lakers move.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of does, right?
But I don't know if I love that either. I think I like it more than Terry Stotts, but
Not sure
I
how
don't
I
know.
feel about Doc with the Lakers. I mean, I don't hate it, but I don't know if I love it necessarily.
Yeah,
Either.
same here.
Kind of think
Just bring
they.
Phil Jackson back.
I mean, according to a lot of reports, so I did follow this, I guess, but he was a big part of kind of their search, right? From what I've read, is like
He was involved in the search, yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
not as a candidate.
no, but I mean, I think he's doing something in the terms of in the back end to see it through. But I don't know. It's obviously a hard task, and I think it's a lot to ask of a coach to come to coach a LeBron team. At this point, we know that there's a lot of pressure with anyone being on LeBron's team.
That's why I think it should be like not necessarily a rookie, but it should be like a young ex-player coach.
who
Like I
doesn't
kind of love that.
right, who's someone who maybe doesn't necessarily have anything to lose too, right? Because if you come in with that, I mean, let's look at the context of when that's worked for LeBron, right? Like Spoelstra was relatively a fresh new coach when he went on the Miami run, right? Tyronn Lue was a relatively new coach when he won a title with LeBron, right? So Frank Vogel was relatively new for the Lakers at that time. So I think there's a bit of a history there with LeBron and kind of newer coaches, or like in a sense, a coach starting off. Like there has been some good luck with that. So I don't think it's necessarily something to frown upon or to neglect. Like I said, Eric Spoelstra was a relatively young coach when Pat Riley was pretty set on him being the guy in Miami, and they kind of just lived with it and made it work, and it ended up working. And same with Ty Lue, ended up kind of being a young coach. But I think what you said is a really good point. Is LeBron typically does seem to like to play for guys who played the game.
You know who I like? He hasn't been in rumors.
Who?
But this is not just the Lakers. This is like someone, if I was any team, I would really be interested, is Sam Cassell.
Interesting. Yeah, his name's has his name come up?
He's Doc's number one guy right now.
Right.
And he's been for, I think, like the last 5 years or something.
Yeah. And I mean, like, look, there's been a lot of luck with assistant coaches turning into great coaches. Nick Nurse, Emeka Doka is looking like he's going to be probably the coach in Boston for a really long time.
As he should be, yeah.
And something about just his style, like it's when he challenges for me. It's just the way.
Dude, I would not want him to be angry with me. He's so scary looking.
Scary. It looks like he's got a full command of that team, but then it's also just like his strategic timeouts. Like he never seems to miss a beat in terms of playing the game with or coaching the game with like a poise and a higher IQ. Like, you know when a coach just will take the time out, it's the perfect time to take it, or you rarely see a guy like Udoka making mistakes like that. Like, he just seems very on top of his game. He's very aware of what's going on at all times in the game. He's very aware of when he's going to challenge, when is the right time to challenge. He's very strategic with his challenges. Which we've talked about on this show before, but I think next year there's been some talk just through like TNT and all that. I've heard it throughout the playoffs, but I think it's unanimously kind of agreed upon now that if you win your challenge, you should probably get it back. And I would not be surprised if next year we see that. Because I think it's been obvious throughout the playoffs that if we've seen teams win challenges and then kind of take a jump ball at half court and then
exactly. Well, just wish they had it on maybe like the very next play.
And then exactly, so then or in at the end of the fourth quarter, whatever the context is.
And I'd be all right with like you keep your challenge, and then if you challenge again, like that's it.
Right. Like,
you know what I mean? Like,
right.
I don't want to keep it forever.
No, I think the perfect sweet spot is you get it back for a second time. But then it's like after that, it's like that's your last one. So you got to be strategic with when to use that, because we don't want to slow the game down to the point where it's just challenge.
Sure.
But I think there needs to be a reward for doing it, or not even a reward. You need to just not be punished for the ref making a mistake. And especially if you get it right and you call it out and you challenge successful, you should
Yeah, it just
definitely
doesn't make sense.
you should
Yeah.
definitely not lose your challenge or the ability to
agree.
challenge. But I
I think everybody would agree with that.
yeah, and I think that's kind of like that just seems like something that it was bound to evolve over time, just like the NBA All-Star Draft being televised. Like it just seems like one of those things that's coming, and I wouldn't be surprised if next year we see that at all. So yeah. Anything else you want to touch on before we wrap today? We're at the hour 4, so we're right on time. Anything else we missed?
Saw some news about Team Canada starting to get ready. I'm liking the names that I'm seeing there. Looks like it's going to be a full squad. So I'm excited about that. And the other thing is, I thought maybe you wanted to talk about this, but the All NBA
Right.
selections.
Saw that.
We don't need to go all. I think they're all pretty deserved, but I do think I agree with Jason Tatum
The Embiid thing, right?
about. Well, I know he was saying about Embiid, but just in general that they should be positionless.
Right.
And I completely agree with that. Like completely. It's not like we're sending the squad out to go up against anybody. There's no reason that it has to make sense as a squad on paper. Like it's the first team, the 5 best. Like
Right. If it's 5 point guards, it's 5 point guards. Like,
that's it. If it's 5 centers, it's 5 centers. Like,
Right.
And,
And
the thing is, it won't be. It won't be. But you'll probably have a couple years where you have, 3 guards or 2
right.
Centers,
Yeah.
right?
It
But
should.
it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. And it's like exactly like this Embiid thing. It doesn't make sense. Like how could a guy lead the league in scoring, finish second in MVP voting, and then
Because the guy he finished second to is the guy who got the spot.
right? But it's like they could have if given positionless
Then it would be
All
fine.
NBA, he probably would have been on there, right? Like so, yeah. It's
Although, who do you take out?
so who was on first team? I'm trying to think. It was you had Jokic, you had Steph, right? Giannis,
Tatum,
and who's the last one?
Luka probably.
Luka or Durant? Was it Luka? It was Luka, right? Luka.
I think it was probably Luka, but I'm not sure.
Given the season, I'm probably taking out Luka, to be honest. If we're talking All NBA for the season, just because of the time missed, the injury, starting slow, ramping up as we went on, probably makes the most sense to me. You could probably make the argument with Tatum starting slow too, though.
Yeah.
Just hard to take Tatum out of there, given what he's done this playoffs. It's been so good. I mean, you could make the argument that Steph slowed down a lot after he broke the record. You could make the argument. I mean, you're not going to take Giannis or Jokic.
It's not an
out.
easy thing. That's it.
Right.
That's where I was going with
Sure, yeah. I think that the ones you're definitely not taking out are Giannis and Jokic, right? Like those guys are in there for sure. But I think that anyone else, you could make an argument to why Embiid probably deserves to be there more this year, at least for the season. Like context is everything. Luka was missing a ton of games because of injury. Steph missed a lot of games because of injury. That's playing into my decision as well. You know what I mean? So. And you got to do your best to ignore the playoffs, but it's, I can't take into the consideration Tatum in Boston and then ignore Luka in the playoffs. So it's hard, but I think, yeah, definitely a hard one. And if it's positionless, it makes it a lot easier. And it makes it, like you said.
It just makes it more possible.
Right.
To get something that's more accurate.
Sure. And I don't think there's any reason. I think the same should be with the NBA draft. Or sorry, not the NBA, All-Star game. Why not make it positionless, right? Like if
well, they're kind of moving in that direction, but
yeah.
I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's. I mean, like positionless basketball is such a big thing now. Guys guarding the 1 to 5, and everything. The context of the game is so different. It's a completely different game than it was 10 years ago. But yeah, I hope that in the future we can get to a point where these awards aren't position based and we're not putting someone into All NBA first team because they're the best available player that we can pick. You know what I mean? It should just go to the best available player, I think, and I believe. So yeah, we didn't really touch on the All NBA teams. Maybe we can do that next week. It'll give us something to talk about post our kind of finals preview analysis of the first few games. That would be cool too. I didn't even think of that, but
when's game 1 going to be if Boston takes it tonight? Is it Monday?
I would assume there's a little bit of a delay. I would assume there's a little bit of a break, but I would assume it's probably looking at like a Monday, Tuesday thing. But game 1, June 2nd.
Oh, nice. I like it when the finals are in June. I like it. Nice, nice, nice. Final should not be before June. I'm
So
good with
that
that.
that would actually be
What is
pretty.
that? Thursday or
That's
something?
Thursday, so that's a while. That's a little
Ooh,
bit
I
else. There,
like it.
there'll
I
be a
like
bit.
it.
There'll be a bit of a break in between, which will be good. It will give the guys
I'm good with
time
that.
to rest and get fresh, and hopefully, if
Let
Boston,
Marcus Smart plan his fake injury for the next game.
right, exactly, so they can list him as questionable, and ultimately he'll probably play. Okay, man. I think we touched on a lot of good stuff. I don't know if there's anything else you want to touch on before we wrap, but I think we touched on a lot. Obviously, we have Game 6 tonight. That should be interesting, and yeah, I mean, I think both of us probably predicting Boston Golden State final, but we will see next week. We'll see where it's looking. We'll see what it's looking like. We'll see where it's headed. We'll see. Who knows? Maybe Boston comes out and completely shocks us, and they're up 2-1 on Golden State or something, or maybe they're up 3-1. Who knows? There could be a lot that could change. Maybe Miami gets in there and pulls off something crazy. So yeah, we'll have a lot to talk about, and we'll probably get into, if it's cool with you, next week. We'll go into the full list of all NBA.
Yeah,
and,
it's cool with me, bro.
And that will give us I think, good talking point on teams, what they can do. Will this player be on this list next year? Where can they improve? What's their trajectory? It will just give us a really good talking point to lead into off season, and where we see these guys being next year. So that'll be, I think, kind of cool to do post second half of next week's show. After we talk about the finals. So yeah, nice talking to you, man. Good episode. Yeah, I'll see you here next Friday, 3 p.m.
It's the block party.
Block party. Peace out, guys.